Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And joining us today is Congressman Ruben Gallego, a Democrat representing Arizona's 7th Congressional District. And while we want to start with something that's not really dominating the headlines right now, but we do want to talk about health care, big issue in Congress right now. Now, the repeal, replace of Obamacare, it passed out of the House, and you gained a little bit of attention by some of your actions immediately following that vote. Explain.
Well, it actually wasn't immediately following the vote. It was actually prior to the vote. Okay. And what many of us were trying to say and get out is the fact that they're passing this bill without an actual CBO score. Now, I happen to be the one that was one of the loudest ones, sure. But the fact is the CBO score came out 2 weeks later, and what it showed was, like we thought would happen, 23 million people lose health insurance right away. Medicaid would be slimmed down. Pre-existing conditions would be back. All these things that members of Congress voted for, Republican members of Congress voted for, without a CBO score. Something that we need especially when you're going to affect 1/6 of the U.S. economy.
But what about, we've seen that the administration has questioned the CBO score. What's your reaction to that? I mean, the CBO score has largely been seen, at least throughout the history, recent history, as non-political. Most people take that as a very serious estimate. The administration doesn't seem to be taking that tact.
Well, this administration chooses facts. I mean, they're the administration that coined the term alternative facts. But the CBO administrator is a nominee from the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. They have traditionally been very conservative on their estimates. And I will say, I disagree sometimes with the CBO score, but at the end of the day, they tended to be right. And when they have been wrong, it's not because their estimates were wrong, it's because the policies later changed. Mm-hmm. But for us to just call them a partisan institution when they really do some really great independent work, I think is a detriment.
Now, but what's the realistic chances, though, of this getting through the Senate? We've already seen a lot of the leaders over there saying, basically, we're starting over again. Yeah. I mean, if they're able to come back and get a bill that says, well, we've reduced the number of people who might be off health care to 15 million or 10 million, is that going to be better for the Republican Party?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the biggest problem is that Speaker Ryan made his really incumbent and moderate members take a walk, and the vote that they voted for will end up being 23 million people that they're kicking off health insurance. Doesn't matter how you split hairs. It's the same thing that happened to Democrats. I mean, we ended up owning the Affordable Health Care Act and the rollout that was so horribly done. And the same thing is going to occur with our moderate Republicans in the House, and actually maybe even beyond moderate Republicans.
Yeah, and the president has urged senators to put more money into this bill. What do you think the effects of that are going to be?
Well, I don't think that means anything. I mean, that's just President Trump throwing that. He doesn't actually understand health care policy. I mean, if he wants to throw more money into it, you could do it by making sure that the risk corridors are paid, and that way there are actually more insurers that will take on our higher cost patients. But he just kind of threw that out there, and I think he doesn't quite understand the process.
So what do you think is next when it comes to to health care now? I mean, it seems like, the Senate has always moved slow. It seems like they're even moving slower when it comes to this issue, well, and particularly because there's so many other issues that keep popping up.
I think that they're being responsible. The Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats are being responsible by moving slow. This is 1/6 of the economy. You're going to potentially affect potentially 170 million people. That's not including Medicare in terms of insurance and their quality of insurance and their premiums. So there's no necessity for you to move fast. And if anything, if there is an opportunity for us to work together to improve the Affordable Health Care Act, bring down premiums, expand coverage, these are the words that Donald Trump used during the campaign, then we should do it. But anything else I think is going to cause a lot of mayhem into our insurance market system.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's talk a little bit about taxes. Do you think we're going to see the type of tax reform that the president has promised? Obviously, this has been a top priority for the administration. It always seems to be a top priority for Republicans when you start talking about tax cuts.
Well, I think if you saw the reaction and how difficult it was for them to get the repeal of the Affordable Health Care Act through, tax reform is an entirely different animal, and to get it done quickly, you're affecting a lot of people's, holy cow, I guess I would say, a sacred cow. Where do you really want to start tapping money that's not going to affect people? You can't deal with it. You can't go into the mortgage deduction interest. That affects working class people. There's just very few areas where you can actually find this pot of money. At the end of the day, I don't think they're going to be successful. They may end up doing like a small cut just to say that they ended up doing some form of tax cut. but a huge tax overhaul system is not going to be done quickly, and nor should it be done quickly.
And we also saw recently that the president had put out his budget proposal, and he's been really criticized pretty heavily from a lot of different areas for some massive cuts to a lot of social programs. Now, how much of in this proposal, particularly to those cuts to those social programs, could we see at the end of the day when this budget is officially passed by Congress?
Right. Well, I mean, what we've seen so far from the Senate is that they've already called this dead on arrival. And I think that pretty much is going to send this back to the drawing board. There may be an attempt, I think, in the House to actually introduce this, but at the end of the day, it will end up having to be a compromise or end up being some type of stopgap measure, which is what we've seen so far. But anything besides the social programs, an increase in defense spending while at the same time you're decreasing foreign aid, especially funding of the State Department, is just ludicrous. You're actually going to cause more wars and than preventing wars by doing stuff like that.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, you're a former Marine. I mean, there was a lot of more money in this budget for increased military spending. He keeps saying that we're going to make the military rebuild the military. Is that the case? Does the military right now need rebuilding? Well,
first of all, it's not a former Marine, always a Marine. But number two, yes, the military does need a certain level of rebuilding, but you have to do it smartly. And we also need to actually audit the Pentagon. They have not gone through a defense audit in more than 20 years. We have seen reports where there's more than $145 billion of waste. There are some systems and platforms that we don't need anymore. There are some new systems and platforms that we need to invest in. But throwing money at the problem doesn't solve the problem. Not when it comes to social goods and social issues, as well as defense issues.
Okay, and one last question on military spending. I mean, does this country need to invest more in cyber warfare? I mean, obviously, we've seen a lot more attention given to that with the 2016 election, with the Russians meddling in our election process. Yeah. Should more money be spent on that side of the military spectrum?
It's not necessarily money. We do have the ability and the capability and technology to do it. It's actually the recruitment of men and women that want to do this type of work. And we really have to rethink how we recruit these men and women into a military. These are, and I've said this before, and I've advocated for us to have a cyber National Guard with, actually loosened requirements. These are not the type of people that are going to hump 20 miles like I did with a full pack. They're not going to be great shooters. But guess what? I can never code. I was a great shot. And these men and women can come and code and hack for us, and we should figure out how to bring them into our defense apparatus to actually make them useful to this country. But that's how we have to actually rethink our cybersecurity.
Okay, now move on now to another big issue we saw last week, the president deciding to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, he's faced a lot of backlash from world leaders. He's facing a lot of backlash from people back here, particularly mayors and some governors throughout the country. I mean, the president's saying that the deck was stacked against them in this deal. Is that correct, and did the president make the right decision here?
Well, I think that's incorrect, and I think there's a couple of things you've got to remember. That the Paris Agreement is a worldwide agreement. However, every nation gets to decide how they want to hit their goals. And the way that the United States was actually progressing, we were actually about, I think, 60% of the way to our goals because of the switch. Because of just market forces from coal to methane and natural gas. So the fact that we're just pulling out doesn't really make sense. You're actually abdicating world leadership for something that we could have actually done as a nation, and will probably affect us economically in terms of our green exports.
Okay. Also want to talk to you a little bit about some reports we saw recently regarding the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, that he may have sought to open up a back-channel negotiation with Russians before Mr. Trump took office. Now, I've seen you quoted earlier in saying that his security clearance needs to be taken away. Yeah. Why do you say that?
It's not the back channel that's a problem. There's been a tradition in history, you go back to Kennedy and to even, Nixon and other presidents where their staff and or family members do actually have back channels to other world leaders. It's the fact that he wanted to have a back channel in the Russian embassy, didn't disclose it on his security clearance, and would not actually be able to be observed by American intelligence makes it very questionable. And then other follow-up actions that he did not report makes us very worried that he is not being responsible with security clearance, and he should not have access to this type of information.
So this is actually another data point, another story in this overall narrative about the Trump administration, their contacts allegedly with Russians. What do you think is going with this story? Do you think there's more smoke here? Do you think there's any fire?
I think there's smoke and fire. I think the special counsel is going to find some form of collusion that occurred. I don't know how far up it will go, I do think that there is a definite move in terms of, from the Trump administration, in terms of obstruction of justice. And if he continues on that route, that he can find himself in a very serious situation.
Okay. And I want to wrap this up here. I want to bring it back a little bit closer to home. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your future, you know, moving forward here. We've got an election coming up next year. Most people have been talking a lot about your colleague, Kyrsten Sinema, potentially running for Senate. But when I look at her voting record, she has made some votes that have upset some of the base. Some might argue that your voting record, the things you've done, been very vocal on taking on the president, maybe more in line with the grassroots. Is this something that you would consider looking at, possibly running for the U.S. Senate next year?
No, not right now. I have a newborn son. I need to spend time with him. I do enjoy my work. I enjoy my work on the Armed Services Committee. I think I'm going to keep doing effective work as a member of Congress, and I need to continue doing that, and then, see what happens in the future.
But it's something maybe in the future that you would consider then?
Absolutely. I would, for me, it's all about service to the country, and I would consider that and almost anything else, as long as I think I could be actually useful to my country and to my community.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up here. We're going to have to take a quick break, but we do have lots more here to come on Politics Unplugged. Up next, Governor Doug Ducey sits down to talk about what lies ahead for Arizona and what pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement could mean.
Well, I don't think this is going to hurt Arizona's economy. We have a real commitment to environmental quality here in the state of Arizona.
Just ahead, Ducey talks about the state of our state here on Politics Unplugged.
Would you want to know if you had it? The rare strain of Alzheimer's affecting people in their 30s and 40s. Why this young Phoenix teacher got the test, but doesn't want to know the results.
You're never really taught how to deal with something like this.
Nicole Kreitz with a new study that could be the key for treating everyone else.
That's leading to the hope that intervening earlier in the process might be more successful.
Thursday at 9:43, only on 3TV.
Getting hurt in a wreck can ruin your day, but speaking to the insurance company before calling us could ruin your life. Pick up the phone and call us first. We'll deal with the insurance company and make sure you get every dollar you deserve. Call 977-1900.
Also handling criminal and DUI defense cases.
Jared Valdir plays football for a living. He's 6'8", 29 years old, and weighs 321 pounds. He can bench 450 pounds. He's a strong man, a really strong man. Jared protects other strong men for a living, but he can't protect you.
On the football field, I'm your guy. But in your car, it's up to you.
If Jared blows it, it's only a game. If you blow it, it's your life. Seatbelts for life.
Unplugged is a member of the Greater Phoenix Chamber for one reason, and that's because we want to contribute to Arizona business just like the Chamber does. I would absolutely recommend the Greater Phoenix Chamber to anyone in the Valley that wants to make incredible partnerships and really collaborate with like-minded businesses.
At Peter Piper Pizza, we're focused on one thing, making families happy. And that means serving up a good time for everyone, including mom and dad. It's why we make our dough from scratch every day. Top it off with the freshest ingredients, offer beverages adults enjoy too, and have the kind of games everyone loves. Because shouldn't family fun be fun for everyone? Get 24 slices for under $24 with our Extra XL deal. 2 extra large one-topping pizzas, just $23.99. Limited time offer. Peter Piper Pizza. Pizza made fresh, families made happy.
A car wreck can leave your life spinning out of control. You need to get your car fixed and pay medical bills. We're Lerner and Rowe. Call us the moment you've been injured. Let us turn your wreck into a check. Call 977-1900.
Also handling criminal and DUI defense cases.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged, and with the legislative session wrapped up, putting policy into place and looking at what comes next falls on Governor Doug Ducey, and this week he sat down with me to talk about it. Well, thank you for taking some time out to talk to us a little bit. First of all, I wanted to talk about an issue I know you definitely have been talking about in the past, this opioid issue. We saw some pretty disturbing numbers come out from the Department of Health Services. I want you to address that.
Well, we had 790 Arizonans die in 2016. This is a record high over the last 4 years. This is more than 2 Arizonans a day that are dying from this epidemic. Mm-hmm. We've had heroin deaths increase 3 times since 2012. This is an emergency. It's a public health emergency, and we're going to treat it as such.
So if you treat it as a public health emergency, how does the governor's office go about treating this?
Well, first I want to talk about some of the things that we've done as we've seen this epidemic grow. We have limited the first fill on opioids that are happening in the state of Arizona when the government is paying. We've put together systems to eliminate doctor shopping. There's many other things that can be done, and we're going to bring together a coalition of the Department of Health Services, the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs, and we're going to have a better program going forward so that we can address this emergency.
Now, do you think the pharmaceutical companies are culpable in this? When you just saw a lawsuit that was filed in your home state of Ohio going after a handful of pharmaceutical companies for what they believe is facilitating this crisis. Your thoughts on that?
I'm not a big fan of lawsuits, but I am a fan of accountability. So I do think that these companies need to be held accountable, and those that are prescribing these drugs and over-prescribing these drugs and abusing them, I think prosecution is part of this as well.
So you will not be, Arizona wouldn't consider joining this lawsuit or filing its own lawsuit?
I want to understand the details of the lawsuit. I want to address the epidemic and call it what it is, a public health emergency. And like I said, everything's on the table.
Moving on to a different topic, obviously there's a scandal over at the Corporation Commission, and one of the chairman over there, Mr. Faris, has suggested that maybe that commission should no longer be elected, that power should rest in your hands, the governor's hands, to go ahead and appoint that body. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm open-minded to any reform that would improve government, that would improve the relationship and the public trust. I'd really like to look at this and see what other states are doing, and if there's a better model or a best practice that we could apply in Arizona.
But you've certainly been interested, at least, in expanding the power of the governor's office. And when you first got here, you were looking at an investigative kind of unit to go in and look for fraud. You've expanded the number of people that are on the state Supreme Court. I mean, this would expand the power of the governor's office, would it not?
Well, I'm not looking to expand the power of the governor's office. I'm looking to best serve the citizens and taxpayers of the state of Arizona. And when I'm interested in something like an inspector general, it's to look at this government that has grown so big and to find where the contracts are that shouldn't be there, where there's fraud or waste or abuse inside our government. I certainly want to exercise the powers of the executive branch, but I also realize that I'm one of three branches that are separate and co-equal.
Sure, and a lot has been written about the lobbyists involved in this scandal. A lot has been written about your relationship with Mr. Jim Norton. Could you explain that so we could hear that from you, just what your relationship with Mr. Norton has been?
I've known Jim Norton for years. We're friends. We went to college together. But I think people know what my stance has been on lobbyists. I actually removed government-paid lobbyists from our boards and commissions here. I typically don't take meetings with lobbyists. I delegate that to staff, but I've known Jim for years.
And your thought when you first heard about this indictment that came down, how concerned are you about
Well, whenever you hear about a federal indictment, it's going to be concerning. And this public trust is incredibly important. And this is a legal situation now, so I don't think it would be right for me to comment on it. Let the FBI do their work, and I want to see justice be served. And I also want to say that people are innocent until they're proven guilty.
Again, a topic of today, President Trump has pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. How do you think this will affect Arizona? Many people are saying that this will hamper the clean energy sector of the economy. And when you think about Arizona, you think about sunshine, you think about maybe producing a lot of solar. Do you think something like this could hurt Arizona's economy?
Well, I don't think this is going to hurt Arizona's economy. We have a real commitment to environmental quality here in the state of Arizona. We have our air becoming cleaner year over year, along with our water. That's not something that we're going to take our eye off as these changes happen. I was able to catch a little bit of the presentation today, and this idea that we can have a better agreement, that America can actually lead and we can expect other countries to follow, is something I'm in support of.
So you are support of the president's decision to pull out of this?
I think if we're going to improve our air and water in this country, we should have the same expectations of the other producers of the world, and I think that's a good idea. I want to see this is a shared climate, and if we're going to make sacrifices here in this country, I want to see that happen in other countries so that what we're doing doesn't hurt hurt our economy while helping the climate. I want to see both. I think you can have cleaner air and cleaner water and having growing jobs in an economy.
And another issue that has kind of come up again this week is the Confederate flag. We've seen other cities, states, they're taking down a lot of memorials to the Confederacy. There are some monuments here in Arizona, I believe about a half dozen or so, including one right across the street over in Wesley Boland Plaza. Should the state be taking those down?
Well, Arizona was founded in 1912, some decades after the Civil War. We do have a commission here that reviews those requests from citizens, and it determines what memorials we put out on the plaza. I'm going to leave this to them and let the citizens provide their input.
Yeah, a couple of years ago you said that you were going to be reviewing that, yet nothing's happened. What happened with that review?
That actually has gone to that commission, and they're handling that. In terms of what happened in terms of next steps, I'd have to check on that.
And what's your thoughts on it? Should the Confederacy be memorialized?
Well, I think that we ought to have a state that's welcoming to everyone. I talk a lot about opportunity for all. Yet at the same time, I think many of these memorials that have been put out there are there for a reason. That's why I think it should go through a citizen review process, and we should be able to bring people to the table and talk about what we want these memorials to look like.
And we've got lots more Politics Unplugged coming right up. We'll be back in just a minute.
It's not a complicated recipe. It's a homemade one. So it calls for just a handful of natural ingredients, like real sugar and extra cream. Because at Turkey Hill, we found that the simple way is the most delicious way. All natural ice cream from Turkey Hill. Extra simple, extra good. Available at Fry's.
I've been inspecting homes in the valley for years, and I can always tell when I'm in a Fulton home.
Go deep enough inside, and you notice shortcuts other builders take. Most home buyers have no idea because they fall in love with what they see on the surface. But I'll tell you, Fulton Homes consistently outperforms everyone else. Because a quality home is built from the inside. Legendary Fulton quality, available only at Fulton Homes.
You're proud to own, we are proud to build.
Recognition, respect, rewards. That's the tribute card from Desert Diamond West Valley. The rewards card for active duty, retired, and veteran members of the U.S. military. It's our way of saying thank you, with exclusive benefits like $10 free play on the 1st and 15th of each month. Your service, our appreciation. The tribute card at Desert Diamond West Valley. See the Reward Center for details. Experience the possibilities.
An enterprise of the Donna Autumn Nation.
Hey, job's all done. Kind of expensive, but I got an out-of-sight warranty.
Nice. What is the warranty?
When I'm out of sight, the warranty's void.
At Parker & Sons, all work comes with a warranty at no charge. We do things right the first time. That's how we won the BBB Torch Award for ethics. Call Parker today for all your plumbing, heating, cooling, and drain cleaning needs.
And I promise there'll be no meltings on your job.
Call 602 to repair to get it done.
It's official. Over 1,100 Accords must go. Save now. Just $189 a month. Accord, the #1 selling vehicle for the past 40 years. A car and driver 10 best or record 31 times for less than the competition. $189 a month. Truckloads of Accords on sale for $189 a month. Or save thousands with 0.9% financing. Don't miss the Accord sales event this week at your Valley Honda dealers.
Oh, yeah, I like it.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's now time to talk it out with our partners from First Strategic. And with us today is Marcus Dellartino and Kurt Davis. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with you, Kurt. Get your reaction to, you saw Congressman Gallego's interview here just a few minutes ago. What do you think is going to happen next with this health care bill now in the Senate?
He's correct. It is a large part of our economy. It is going to take a long time. But the part he didn't mention is the current situation, as we call Obamacare, is bankrupt and will not function. There has to be a replacement, and it's not going to be continuing what we've been doing.
All right, now I want to talk to you on another big issue here back in Arizona. Jeff Flake has really been speaking out a lot about NAFTA. He's been recruiting a lot of people to talk about and share their stories about how NAFTA has benefited him. First of all, I want to play a little soundbite that we have from him and get your response about that on the other side.
Now, while Arizona has much to gain from modernizing NAFTA, it's a must that we understand just how important this trade agreement is to the economic growth and opportunity here in our state. Trade with Mexico supports about 100,000 jobs in our state, and retailers depend on Mexican shoppers who spend about $8 million daily in Arizona.
Now, I was talking to you a little bit before the show about this, and you were saying, scratching your head a little bit, going, I don't get this. Explain that.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, look, everybody knows Jeff Flake's an advocate for free trade, right?
Sure.
Even before he was a senator, he was an advocate of free trade. But that being said, you're going into a Republican primary against Dr. Kelly Ward. NAFTA is frankly not all that popular, although more popular in Arizona certainly than it is nationwide. This wouldn't be the primary issue I would center my campaign around. Certainly wouldn't be NAFTA. And so from that perspective, just politically, it's an odd topic.
Is this something that makes it a little more vulnerable, at least in a Republican primary next year?
I think this could be somewhat of a defensive maneuver. He knows he's going to be attacked on it, so if you know that, you try to get out in front of it and maybe kind of recalibrate the issue.
All right, now I've got to ask you, I know you've been chomping at the bit here to talk a little bit about the Paris Agreement. As we were saying earlier, President Trump had pulled out of that despite warnings from a lot of business leaders and scientists saying, like, look, this is going to hurt the economy. It's going to stall production of jobs of the future. What's your take on the president's decision?
It's going to save thousands of American jobs because it was a bad agreement, and the reason a lot of the world likes it is because they were going to steal American jobs. Look, most people, when they're talking about this, don't understand the fact that, for example, China doesn't even begin to implement air quality measures till 2050. So how is that fair between the United States and China? This thing is a colossal ripoff of America, and I'm really glad the president pulled us out of it.
Now, do you share Kurt's assessment of that, and do you think that maybe Trump, as some suggested, is abandoning U.S. leadership?
I don't think he's abandoned U.S. leadership. I think that this is an interesting topic in this, and that it is the entire Paris Agreement in the last 48 hours has been sort of surrounded by conjecture and a few words here and there with no science into this. And when you look at what the UN's analyzed as what the benefits will be, and you start to act, this would take a week to get into a proper discussion about it.
You've seen a lot across the country, a lot of mayors are banding together and saying that we're going to ignore what the president did and move forward with what the Paris Accords had set out to do. I want to play a little clip here of Mayor Greg Stanton and get your comment to that on the other side of that.
If carrying a burden means that we reduce our drought conditions, we have less forest fires in Arizona, and we reduce extreme heat in Arizona, I'd say that's a small price to pay to benefit us here locally. This is an Arizona issue.
Your response?
He doesn't really have any authority, and the bottom line is if you want to move the ball on this like it has been on this issue, it's done by the market, not by government edicts, and it's certainly not going to happen from the city of Phoenix.
Well, the city of Phoenix has already been exceeding everything on a green pattern, right? Whether how they build their streets, how we do storefronts, our trees. We want to keep the streets, the heat bubble down. This had absolutely nothing to do with the Paris Accord. It has to do with how Phoenix wants to operate.
And I'll give you the final word about it. 10 seconds.
Well, I just hope that people will take the time to actually read the agreement and see the advantages that exist for other countries who are not going to be held accountable for their impact on our environment. America can lead through its market changes, not through government edict.
All right, well, that is all the time we have tonight, but be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.